Hey, it's Drybear. Path of Exile 2 Season 2.2 version, the Dawn of the Hunt, has been out for a week, so let's look at the most popular classes and ascendancies being played on the leaderboards. Now, this is a series that I did at the start of early access for Path of Exile 2, and we'll bring it back for this now that we have a new season with new data and all that coming in. Again, huge disclaimer, the only real data that we have available is the top 1,000 players on the leaderboards, so this doesn't represent the entirety of the player base, but at least tells you what the best players in the world are playing and how things are shaping up, and then we can track trends as we go from week to week as people start to push towards endgame and all of that. Starting with the standard softcore league, you can see that Amazon is nearly 50% of the total pool, which means that most people, which is kind of an interesting discussion, most people that are coming back into the game are trying the new stuff, which is pretty typical for an ARPG. Generally, ARPG's life cycles is start a season, everyone comes back, they try all the new stuff. There are still people that still play all the old classes and see what changed or try the new mechanics, but everyone's really trying the new class Huntress, which has Amazon and Ritualist as the Ascendancies. There's also Smith of Kitava, Lich, and of course the Tactician for Mercenary as new options. So Amazon, which is right now dominating the leaderboards because of the Lightning Spear build that is destroying everything in the game, incredibly powerful, is nearly half of the entire top 1,000 softcore leaderboard for Dawn of the Hunt. An interesting takeaway here is this is the first time ever I think we did about 8 weeks, so like 2 months total of tracking the data. I don't think we've ever seen out of all of the Path of Exile 2 stats for leaderboards, we have never seen a single ascendancy reach 0% representation. So for the first time ever, Blood Mage is at 0, which means there isn't, at least in Softcore Trade League, there is not a single Blood Mage ascendancy that is on the top 1,000. Next to that is Acolyte of Chalupa for 0.1%, almost 0, and a huge fall for grace for the Stormweaver, which was the #1 pick for most of the .1, like Season 1 Path of Exile 2 Early Access last season. Stormweaver now down to 0. So you see a lot of those classes and ascendancies just aren't there. However, there's some cool breakouts here. We do see Lich making its way up towards the top, some good survivability with Lich, as well as some really cool damage options as well. And finally, some more chaos, which is awesome for Witch in general. And you'll see that even in Softcore, Smith of Kitava, the new ascendancy for Warrior, has made its way into the top 4. And you'll see as we get into Hardcore and Solo Self, Smith of Kitava is even higher in popularity because of this. And part of me is kind of excited that the most popular specs from last season are falling down, so like Invoker being a lot lower, Stormweaver falling off completely. This is not the spread you'd like to see, but again, this is a little skewed because it is top 1,000, so people are playing the best options available, which will get more interesting as we get into SSF, but I'm glad to see Huntress being picked up, the Lightning Spear is doing very well, and the new ascendancies with Lich and Smith of Kitava are doing well. However, unfortunately, Tactician, Mercenary in general just seems to be continuing to struggle, even though I've heard a lot of great feedback on people saying that the crossbow changes are very strong. I haven't played Mercenary yet this season. I've been playing a lot of Huntress, so I haven't messed with that too much yet, but Tactician, you can see, is quite low. Gemling Legionnaire is quite low, even with the Witch Hunter, like the three mercenaries for Softcore are really down towards the bottom. But let's compare that to Softcore Solo Self-Found. As we know that, you know, when you start with Softcore Trade League, it means that it's going to be the most open league in general. People that play Softcore Trade League will usually be able to get large spikes in damage and generally tend to favor the strongest builds in the game because they know it's like a well fleshed out build that has a lot of people researching and attempting things with it, which means you can just go to the Trade League, buy whatever gear that you need with, trade for it, pick it up, get the build, and then you can clear all of the Uber bosses and Arbiter and all of that and get it done. But you can see that with SSF, Amazon has come down a bit. None of the ascendancies are at a full 0%, so we do have some representation for some of these. However, basically, Chronomancer, Acolyte of Chalupa, Infernalist, Blood Mage, and Stormweaver are very close to extinction here in the top 1,000 for Softcore SSF. But again, this is a non-trade variant, which means you can't just buy the gear. You have to either drop or craft all of the gear that you have, which changes up the representation. However, top 5, Amazon and Ritualist for Huntress still up there. Lich and Smith Smith of Kitava still very high up there as well. However, we see that Deadeye, when you go to SSF, drops down and Smith of Kitava comes up. And actually, if we just go between these, you can see that Lich is 10.5 to 13.4, so went up. Deadeye 12.5 to 7.9 went down, and Smith is from 8.9 to 18.7. So almost a 10% global increase for Smith of Kitava when it comes to SSF Softcore. But because it is Softcore, you still see a lot of people kind of favoring the new hotness, and a lot of the new classes are being played up here. We're seeing a lot of Amazon, obviously a big breakout there. And the middle line here, I mean, this is not really a great spread overall. You would like to see this be more of a smooth curve as it goes from the top down to the bottom, whereas this distribution is very heavily, like, it's extremely top heavy. It's focused mostly on the new stuff plus Deadeye, and then even just some of these coming up. What's cool, we see Tactician coming up from the bottom to above the halfway point on SSF as well. So if you're forced into SSF, people running Tactician. We still see Titan and Warbringer kind of near the middle here, Invoker lower than in Softcore Trade, but overall kind of a similar trend as we saw with the Softcore Trade version. Moving on, let's take a look at Hardcore Trade League. So this changes things a lot. If you don't know, in Path of Exile 2, if you select Hardcore, your character gets one and only death, which means that if you die at any point, you will lose your Hardcore status. You will be forced into the Parent League, which in this case would be Softcore Trade League. So it'll push you back into the standard Dawn of the Hunt League if you die a single time, which in general means that the spread changes quite a bit because people tend to prefer classes that have more survivability, and they also are a little more insulated from trends. Hardcore, especially Hardcore SSF, I think is the most representative of what people are trying, because you can't get help from anybody if you're SSF, you can't trade for anything, and you only have one life, which means trends and meta and all of that kind of falls to the wayside, much more so than in the Softcore League for that there. So you'll notice that in Hardcore compared to the other options, so if we look at like Softcore, we have Smith of Kitava 8.9%, Amazon way higher, but if we go to Hardcore, you can see that Smith of Kitava way higher. Smith of Kitava has some awesome survivability aspects. I haven't played Smith myself, so if you're playing Smith of Kitava this season, let me know how it compares to Titan specifically. I know a lot of people ran Titan specifically last season for Warrior for the survivability aspects, or even Infernalist for the survivability aspects, but we're seeing Smith of Kitava jump up a large amount in Hardcore this season. Lich way up as well, and Amazon way down. So we're seeing a lot of people that are not preferring to run Huntress in Hardcore. The Softcore, either Softcore SSF or Softcore Trade, we're seeing almost everyone, a vast super majority playing Huntress, and more specifically playing Amazon, probably doing the Lightning Spear build that's dominating the charts right now. But as we go into Hardcore, we can see that Amazon and then the Ritualist is just over 11% of the total here of options, even though it is the brand new class. People are preferring Lich and Smith of Kitava, and then Deadeye actually moving up a bit in Hardcore as well, which is kind of cool. Invoker about the same, Infernalist about the same, and then all of the other ones much, much lower. But we do see Stormweaver at the very bottom for Hardcore. I think people are just kind of over it. A lot of Stormweaver last season. Acolyte of Chalupa went to Taco Bell and got some indigestion, so still down at the bottom. Blood Mage still quite low as well, though I think a lot of people that prefer Blood Mage all just switched to Lich this season anyways, just because it's the new hotness, and I think there's still a lot of issues with Blood Mage, how it's set up now. So that was Hardcore class popularity. Let's transition to Hardcore SSF class popularity. So we can actually just see the comparison here in general. See Smith of Kitava way higher. This is kind of crazy for Hardcore SSF. The fact that the Warrior Smith of Kitava is so incredibly high. The survivability aspect is paramount. And again, I would say the best representation of how people are playing the game right now is most accurate with Hardcore SSF, because again, they're insulated from trends. They tend to be the furthest from meta or whatever the hot new build is, or whatever streamers are telling people to play right now, because Hardcore is you get one life. SSF means no one can help you, you can't trade, you're on your own, and it's just basically these pilgrims that go off into the desert by themselves and play the game. So a lot more preference for Smith of Kitava in that reference here. Lich much higher as well, and Amazon still there. So the trends here are quite similar. similar. Some big disparities here. Deadeye coming down, Amazon coming up. And again, I think there's a little bit more of a bullish mentality when it comes to hardcore SSF, because it's like, I'm just here to play all on my own, right? So we kind of have that representation. Titan coming up a bit, Ritualist coming up a bit. Tactician actually, I think, is the highest of all. Yeah, it's the highest of all the representations here in hardcore SSF. So people are really giving it a shot. They're still kind of leaning on the Gemling Legionnaire and the Infernalist Invoker from last season that are still quite good. But Pathfinder, Witch Hunter, all of these kind of still falling down to the bottom in class popularity for hardcore SSF. Next, let's talk about the survival rates. This one again comes with a little bit of an asterisk. So the way this works is I have looked at all the classes that exist in hardcore and hardcore SSF. Of the classes that exist there, weighed against themselves. So it's not like Chronomancers weighed against Liches or Blood Mages. This is a survival rate weighted against itself, meaning that, say, of all the Chronomancers that exist in the top 1,000 leaderboard, 83% of them are still alive, which means that, 16.77 or 66% of them have died. And you can see that as this goes down here. Now, obviously, the classes that are better represented by popularity are going to have a more accurate survival rate represented here, because obviously like Acolyte of Cheula, Chronomancer, like Witch Hunter, the ones that have low representation, like they're a small number of players, the survival rate's going to fluctuate more, because if there's only 3 Chronomancers and 2 of them are alive, then it's going to give you a better number. But it is, I think, interesting to see, because obviously once these characters die on the leaderboard, they're relegated to their parent league. So hardcore trade league characters immediately get moved over into softcore trade league, and they can no longer progress. So at least when we have those deaths recorded, it does give us at least an interesting representation to look at here. So for the hardcore trade league survival rates, you can see that a lot of the lower representation ascendancies are going higher in survival rates. So like Acolyte of Cheupa, Chronomancer, Pathfinder, Blood Mage all have pretty high survival rates, just because they're kind of less represented. And usually the less popular classes attract some of the more hardcore players that like really try like super sweaty hard, which ends up skewing the stats in their favor for the most part. However, if you do look at some of the more popular representations like Lich, even though Lich is one of the most like top 3 most popular ascendancies in the hardcore league, they have a survival rate of 70%, which means that 70.59% of all the Liches in the top 1,000 for hardcore trade league are still alive. That means that the death rate is quite low for Lich. You can see why people are playing Lich as well. Blood Mage, a little bit lower, but again, kind of an asterisk on that one. Deadeye with a pretty high survival rate. I think this survival rate is actually better than it was last season for Deadeye. Deadeye and Pathfinder kind of went up and down throughout all season 1 as people figured out how to play it. We had like Lightning Arrow, the Lightning Ranger builds got updated and improved with the last patch 2 days ago, and then obviously Pathfinder potion builds have still been pretty good, but we still have a good survival rate there, which we have a good spread, just like like this cohort wise from this all the way down to about Gemling. So anything Gemling and up is pretty decent, though I would say that between like Infernalist, Smithakatava, Amazon, and Gemling are a little bit like a little bit of a deviation down on the survival rate. You would want like 70 to 75% plus for the tankiest classes. So seeing Smithakatava so lower here, like around the halfway point, is a little concerning considering how popular they are. And then we see Tactician at 53%, Titan at 51%, Warbringer 48%, Witch Hunter at 40%, and Stormweaver at 25%. And this honestly, Stormweaver 25 is probably, there's 4 Stormweavers and 3 of them are dead. That's just so sad. So you can see obviously some of these less represented ones are there. So this is the hardcore trade league, which generally has better survival rates because obviously you can trade for very good gear. You can get very calculated increases in strength because you just go on to the trade and trade for the best items that you can get and make your character stronger. So let's take a look at SSF next. Next up is the hardcore SSF weighted survival rates. You can see that these are a little bit smoother because again, you can't get the trade league jumps in power, but on average overall are much lower compared to the hardcore trade league because again, you're at the mercy of RNG. Even if you get all the crafting materials that you need and use the right orbs on your gear, you may still brick your items or things may go wrong, which means that your power spikes are a lot more linear and a lot more continual as you go through your progress, rather than being able to save up a bunch of currency and buy something off the trade league. So we kind of ignore Blood Mage and Acolyte of Chalupa and Stormweaver here. These are high just because they're a little underrepresented, but Tactician on Hardcore SSF has enough statistical representation to show that this is actually really high, which means that the gamers that are playing Hardcore SSF Tactician are actually doing insanely well. Most of them are still alive a week later after the start. Infernalist, Evoker, and Warbringer are kind of grouped together here in Survival. 60% in Hardcore SSF is actually very, very good. And then you can start sliding down here. You can see that almost half the Liches have died already in Hardcore SSF. Witch Hunter having a pretty good survival rate, like Witch Hunter Gemling. And honestly, Hardcore SSF, Tactician, Witch Hunter, Gemling, this is bodes well. It seems the people that are willing to play Mercenary and Hardcore SSF are actually doing incredibly well compared to their other counterparts. As we drop closer to 50%, we have Titan, Smith of Kitava here around 50%, and then we have a big slide off here. Deadeye, Amazon, Pathfinder, Ritualist, and Chronomancer. Kind of interesting here, and this might just be people getting used to the new Huntress class, but having Amazon and Ritualist, the two Huntress Ascendancies being at the very bottom here for Hardcore SSF is kind of telling that maybe the Huntress is actually not as survivable compared to other classes, or maybe people are just still kind of getting their bearings on how to build the Huntress to survive in Hardcore SSF. But that is the total stat distribution for the first week of Path of Exile 2 Dawn of the Hunt Season 2. Let me know what your takeaway is from these stats down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.